Hello, greetings, divine blessed loved ones. I'm Paisley Parvati Devi, and welcome to our weekly yoga philosophy share. Just taking a moment to ground in together. It's crazy how some weeks I get more anxious for these readings, and then other weeks I feel totally calm and chill. I really want to cultivate a relationship with all of you, my community, my viewers, patrons, loved ones, that is mutually accepting. So I hope that I can cultivate an energetic space where you feel safe to come forward with your most authentic self in whatever raw and vulnerable form that may be. And know that you will be accepted and loved wherever you are in this present moment. And likewise, I hope that you can give me the grace to be imperfect and to be human and to show up in whatever form that is the most true and authentic to me from moment to moment. If we can all stand in our own authenticity and truth as humans, this world would be a much more trustworthy place, I'll say that. And that's a fitting introduction because today our topic is truth. So if you are just joining for the first time today, every single week for the past several months I've been going live on every Tuesday at 11 a.m. PST, 2 p.m. EST to share with you a reading from this book, The Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice by Deborah Adele. And we recently restarted the book, so right now we're on chapter 2, which is Satya, and that translates to truthfulness. So if you're interested in seeing previous readings from this book, they're all in a playlist on my page Livity Yogini on Facebook, and they're also all on YouTube for your convenience. So please, I invite you to go and check out those, and then tune in for future readings here on the Livity Yogini page every single week, like I said, every Tuesday at 11 a.m. PST, 2 p.m. EST. And we'll go through the book together. We do about half a chapter every week. It's been about like half an hour video every single week. So what are the Yamas and Niyamas? I always love to just share a little bit from the introduction to the book. So the first 5 jewels are referred to as the Yamas, which can literally be translated from Sanskrit, the beautiful ancient language of yoga, into restraints. So these include nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, non-excess, and non-possessiveness. So these 5 tenets could be considered as actions to be restrained in order to attain inner peace, and they relate more to our relationship with other humans and the external world. And then the niyamas, the last 5 jewels, are referred to as the niyamas, or can be translated to observances, which include purity, contentment, self-discipline, self-study, and surrender. And so these could be viewed as the actions or behaviors to be cultivated in order to attain inner peace. And they relate more to our own internal experience and our relationship with ourselves. So taken together, the Yamas and Niyamas, restraints and observances, they are ethical guidelines or tenets for how to live our life in a way that is going to bring us the most inner peace and essentially cause the least harm, the least amount of harm and the least violence to all existence and all living beings. So all of the creatures and beings outside of ourselves, and also causing the least amount of harm to ourselves. So this is a great starting off point if you're interested at all in yoga philosophy. The Yamas and Niyamas are the first 2 of the 8 limbs of yoga, what is known as Ashtanga yoga, or the 8-fold path, the 8-limbed path of yoga. It's a kind of a layout, or it's a really like tangible and easy way to start to look at and consider and dip our toes into the very deep, rich world of yoga philosophy. The 8 limbs could be considered as an encapsulation of yoga philosophy, could be seen as kind of a roadmap, but also with Eastern philosophy of any sort, we're in circular thinking, so coming back to these simple concepts, simple and yet rich and deep, incredibly vast, rich and deep at the same time, coming back to them over and over again. So for example, they say that if you can fully embody nonviolence, then you have, which is the first of the yamas, then you have completely mastered all 10 of the yamas and niyamas. So it's circular thinking in that yes, ahimsa, nonviolence, is the first of the yamas and niyamas, and it also encapsulates all of the rest, and it can be applied to all of the rest. So as we go through the book, we can think about the relationships of each tenet to each other and learn how to deepen in a little bit more. So as we continue to study these concepts, we can, every time we come back to it, deepen our understanding. So even though I'm in the role of a teacher or the one who is sharing this information right now, I myself am also learning, and in my lineage we have a saying from our teacher Baba Hari Das, teach to learn. So as I share these concepts with you today, it is also for my personal development and understanding. By no means do I claim to be any kind of master of the yamas and niyamas, but as I share with you, then I can, that's that circular thinking, come to an even deeper understanding within myself, because I've been reviewing it, these concepts over and over, and each time you come back to it, you learn a little bit more. So that being said, let's just take a moment to close our eyes, if practical, wherever you are, standing or sitting, just deepening the breath, coming into our bodily awareness, noticing the rise and fall of the chest as you breathe. Full exhale, expelling all of the breath from the lungs. At the bottom of the exhale, see if you can push out just a little bit more air. And then start to inhale, slow, smooth, full yogic breath. And releasing, returning to your natural breath, and again just observing the rise and the fall of the chest, possibly bringing the awareness down to the belly. The belly expands and contracts with the breath. Clearing our minds, we spend all day up in our brain, coming into the body. And just giving ourselves the grace and the patience to realize that, what needs to land today will land. We don't need to fully understand or embody these concepts today, or even begin to understand them, but we can fully trust that when the time is right and when we've experienced what we need to experience, we will fully understand these concepts. And whatever we need to know, whatever knowledge we need to gain from this experience today will land for us, just trusting in that, in the divine timing of all things, including the teachings. So again, just keeping an open mind and allowing yourself to hear what we're sharing today, and not getting in your own way with the mental questions. And of course, I'd love to hear your experiences, thoughts, and reflections in the comments. You're always more than welcome to share. But just prefacing that deep reflection process with coming into this with an open mind. Okay, so Satya, the second of the yamas, the actions to be restrained in order to attain inner peace. And Satya translates from Sanskrit into English as truthfulness. So we read the first half of the chapter last week. Again, I invite you to go back to last week's video and check that out. And last week we covered a few topics: be real rather than nice, how to be authentic in our own self-expression, and to be honest and real with other folks as well as with ourselves, rather than being nice and people-pleasing. And then also self-expression versus self-indulgence, and the need to belong versus the need to grow. So when our personal growth and change puts us in positions where maybe we aren't as accepted, or we aren't having the approval of the people closest to us. And in those scenarios, we need to ask ourselves if it's worth it to us to sacrifice that change and growth and new experience, whatever we want to experience, in favor of having the approval of the person in question, or if it's worth more to us to have this personal growth and evolution and expand our consciousness, and perhaps letting go of this feeling of needing approval from someone outside of ourselves. And also just recognizing that while certain judgments or withholding of approval might come from a place of love and just caring about someone and wanting to protect them, there also comes a point where that person is just holding you back. And it's just, again, up to you to choose for yourself and have the discernment to recognize if that person is holding you back from a place of their own fear, or maybe a place of jealousy, or some kind of resentment, or if they genuinely do have your best interest at heart. Only you have the ability to discern what is really best for you. So the second part of this chapter starts with, do it right the first time. Yogi Raj Achala makes the statement that it is worth the effort to do the task right the first time because cleanup takes so much time. Think about this for a moment. How much time do you spend having to find someone you were a little harsh with and apologize? Or go back and tell someone you can't really do what you said you would do? Or maybe you spend your time and energy trying to avoid that person because of your own embarrassment. Can you imagine speaking and acting so correctly that you never have to go back and apologize or make a new agreement? Or how much time do you spend avoiding things you dislike, like writing your will or facing your finances? These are all acts of cheating truth that result in messes we eventually have to clean up. And what about those lies you tell yourself? I continuously find myself in trouble because I lie to myself about time. I can make promises to myself and others that don't allow for the reality of interruptions, rest, or play. Then I either have to backtrack on my promises or find myself out of balance, keeping up with too many commitments that I've made because of my dishonesty with myself. Who can relate to that one? I also lie to myself when I see the lofty goals that are more wishful thinking than anything the reality of my days can incorporate. So overextending ourselves, right? Over-promising because we want to people please, or we're afraid of somebody's response or how they will see us or think of us if we say no to them, or just genuinely wanting to be involved in so many different things and support so many things and people, and not coming to a place of truthfulness within ourselves, of just recognizing that how impractical that is. And when we overextend ourselves, we don't have the energy and time to reinvest back into ourselves, so we can't recharge, and it just ends up being a not so ideal situation for everyone, yourself included. I also lie to myself when I set lofty goals that are more wishful thinking than anything the reality of my days can incorporate, and then I have to clean up the mess I've made with myself. Not only that, but I've become, once again, a person who cannot trust myself. Can you trust yourself? Can you risk telling yourself the truth? Can you keep the promises you make to yourself and to others? We must be willing to take the risk to tell ourselves the truth and grow ourselves into someone who can trust themselves. We will then be easily able to bear others' trust in us. Being truthful with ourselves makes us trustworthy and frees up all the time we'd normally spent in guilt and regret from our dishonesty. I'll say that again. Being truthful with ourselves makes us trustworthy and frees up all the time we normally spend in guilt and regret from our dishonesty. Truth saves us from having to clean up, and as a bonus, we get to learn something in the process. Doing it right the first time does not always look the same way. Truth is a dance where the rules and certainties change with the circumstances. The fluidity is what makes truth so interesting. So what might be true in this moment might not be true in an hour or tomorrow. And that's how we can kind of ride that wave, and that's why it's so important. I talked a little bit in our last video, I believe, about the importance of really feeling into our bodies and knowing what a yes feels like in our bodies and knowing what a no feels like in our bodies, so that we can really listen to that, because the body doesn't lie. The ego mind is really great at lying to us, right? And telling us these stories so that we can make sense of extrasensory inputs, things from the outer world, relationships with other people. We build these stories in order to protect ourselves, and we build them based on our past experiences so that we don't get hurt in the future. But ultimately, that story is not always based on truth. Actually, it's very little based on the truth of the present moment. It's based on what was the truth in the past, right? So the past is not the present. And how do we grow? By recognizing that and learning to trust ourselves and to trust the present moment, to really be aware in the present with the reality of whatever's happening. So the fluidity is what makes truth so interesting. Truth is fluid. Because of its marriage to nonviolence, truth has a fluidity about it. In one situation, truth shows up boldly and courageously, as when we do a tough intervention on a loved one who is faltering under alcoholism. In another situation, truth shows up in a most gentle way, as when we heap praise upon a young child's diligent artwork. Both of these examples show the different flavor that the practice of truth takes when it is part. Sorry guys, I got a phone call. With the love of nonviolence. The practice of truth takes when it is partnered with the love of nonviolence. I don't know why people always want to call me, specifically during this reading. It seems like every week I have someone trying to call me. I'm so glad that the live stream stays on even if someone calls me. Sorry. Intervention. The compassion of nonviolence keeps truthfulness from being a personal weapon. It asks us to think twice before we walk around mowing people down in our truth and then wonder where everyone went. Again, I'll repeat that. The compassion of nonviolence keeps truthfulness from being a personal weapon. It asks us to think twice before we walk around mowing people down with our truth, then wondering where everyone went. Thanks for sharing that, Michael. Yeah, feelings come and go. Does that mean an objective truth does not exist? That's a great question. The fluidity of truth also requires that we clean our lens and periodically get new glasses with which to observe the world. Our seeing is limited by all the groups that shape us, as well as by our experience. What we believe, whether we are aware of that belief or not, informs everything we do and every truth we make. So maybe it's more of a question of what we believe versus whether there is an objective truth or not. I would say that yes, there is an objective truth, but what she's speaking on is how our personal beliefs color what our personal truth is. So if it's our truth, that's a subjective truth, right? There is an objective truth that exists, like gravity, for example, is objective, but it's still relative, right? Because it's relative to the planet Earth. Like if you go out in outer space, there's not gravity out there, so that's still a subjective truth. Great conversation, love it. So what we believe, whether we are aware of that belief or not, informs everything we do and every choice we make. To be a bold person of truth is to constantly look for what we are not seeing and to expose ourselves to different views than the ones we hold sacred. As Yogi Raj Achala reminds us, what are you not seeing? Because you are seeing what you are seeing. What are you not seeing? Because you are seeing what you are seeing. What are we being blind to or closed-minded to because of our beliefs? Carl Jung understood the fluidity of truth when he made the statement that what is true at one time for us at some point no longer serves us and eventually becomes a lie. He understood that truth changes over time. What was true when we were 2 years old is no longer true or even relevant when we're 17. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Jung writes, "Thoroughly unprepared, we take the step into the afternoon of life. Worse still, we take this step with the false presupposition that our truths and ideals will serve us as hitherto. But we cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. For what was great in the morning will be little at evening, and what in the morning was true will at evening have become a lie." This guideline of truthfulness asks us to update our beliefs and values and views in order to stay current with ourselves and our surroundings. So that's the point I'm making about staying present in this moment. What is true in this moment may or may have not been true 10 minutes ago, an hour ago, or yesterday. That's why, it's so important to constantly be able to have like this openness of mind and change our concepts and beliefs around what we think is right and wrong, what is acceptable and what is not. It's so important to have this fluidity, because without it, then we fall into dogma, right? And relying on other people telling us what is right and wrong. With this philosophy, we are invited to rely on ourselves and understand what is most true and authentic for ourselves from moment to moment. And it also gives us permission to change, right? And grow and be fluid. Just because you set a boundary or said something one day, or, we all say things that maybe we don't mean at times. And it's so important for others not to hold us to that, like, oh, you said that yesterday. So therefore, it's not okay for you to change your mind today or set a boundary today. But of course, it is okay, right? I hope. In India, the fluidity of truth was understood as the practice of what was called the ashramic stages. Life was divided into 4 equal parts or times in life, in which a certain aspect of living was honored and pursued. In the first period of life, it was time to grow up, and with the support of your parents, learn a skill in which you showed interest and ability. In the second part of life, it was time to use this skill for the good of the community and to receive money in return so you could live and raise a family. In the third period of life, it was time to leave worldly possessions and tasks in pursuit of inner wisdom. And in the last phase of life, it was time to return to the community, guiding and supporting the community with the inner wisdom that has been attained. So that's kind of like the hero's journey. Having this process of building yourself up and learning your life skills and learning from mentors, as you grow into an adult. And then once you're there, having a period of expressing yourself as an adult, and then eventually leaving wherever you're from, going out into the world and gathering information, and then coming back and bringing that information to your community and nourishing those same people who nourished you when you were young by giving back to them with your newly gained experience and knowledge and new perspective. Today's times may feel more complicated to us, but there is something to learn from these ashramic stages. We can use these stages to ask ourselves if we are engaged in the truthful pursuit that is right for us at this time in our lives, and to assess if we have done something significant to mark these rites of passage. Ritual helps us to end and begin again without carrying the dead weight of what we have left behind. My oldest granddaughter just marked a turning point when she, along with her whole senior class, met the evening before the beginning of their senior year to write their names in chalk on the high school parking lot. It was a significant event that marked the beginning and ending of a phase of life. So the beauty of ritual in our daily lives to mark these new events and new transformations and new levels of truth. So beautiful to initiate us into these different phases of our expression as a life on planet Earth. Although truth prefers fluidity to rigidity, it also has real substance to it. So this section is titled Truth Has Weight. There is a thickness or a weight to a person who practices truthfulness. I remember hugging my business partner Anne one day and telling her that she was thick. She looked a little taken aback until I explained that I could feel the depth of her integrity and her boldness to make contact with life however it comes to her. I remember literally being able to feel this thickness in her. I could feel her realness. Like Anne, a person of substance is willing to stay present in life, no matter what its initial unpleasantness. So think of someone in your life who is that way. You just know that you can rely on them through thick and thin. They'll always be there for you, and they're true to their word. If they say they're going to do something, they will do it. Or if they can't for some reason, it's not because of anything they planned. It's usually because of something they can't control, but at least they let you know ahead of time, right? Those solid, reliable people. Like Anne, a person of substance is willing to stay present in life no matter what its initial unpleasantness. They know that staying present with the truth of the moment will add more depth to their lives and grow them up to be creative and responsible versus becoming a person who walks around with a subtle "rescue me" sign. So that ties into this idea of radical self-sovereignty, radical self-responsibility, not relying on anyone or anything outside of yourself, because you don't need that. You're willing to go into the pain and sit with it, and you have that inner strength, and it takes time to develop, but as you develop it, you can rely on it more and more, knowing that nothing on the outside can really get to you. You've been through a lot, you can withstand a lot, and having that quality of being able to sit through the challenge and sit through the hard times and just stay present with it rather than running away or trying to distract or cover it up, with substances and sex and just other unhealthy habits and activities, then we can really go into it, and the inner strength that comes from that is really insurmountable. It really can carry us through, and then eventually we have less struggle in general, less anxiety and pain, because we know that at our core we got this, we got ourselves, and God, the divine, has us too. Our back we're watching our own back. Somebody's taking care of us, and that goes into developing faith, which is another topic we could have another whole discussion on. So they know that staying present with the truth of the moment will add more depth to their lives and grow them up to be creative and responsible versus becoming a person who walks around with a subtle "rescue me" sign. We are not the victims of our own lives. We are empowered. We have the ability to make the lives that we want, provided that we change our mindsets. When we run from life, try to manage life, or leave our energy scattered here and there, we feel differently than when our whole self shows up with our thoughts, words, and actions congruent and unified. When we are centered in the moment, we can fully meet the ordinariness of life as well as the challenges of life. Dishes are met with the same contact as arguments as are hugs, so the same level of presence. There is no need to tame ourselves or hide ourselves. All of us shows up to the moment, ready to meet it in truth and integrity, ready to make full contact. Meeting the moment full on is like playing a contact sport. We aren't afraid to play the game with everything we have, or get knocked around a little in the process. It's all part of the fun. There's a profound courage to this kind of willingness to be raw with reality as it is, rather than to run from it or construct a barrier to soften it. When I traveled to Central America in 1988 with the Augsburg College Center for Global Education, I saw firsthand this kind of willingness to be raw with reality, no matter how horrible. At that time, El Salvador was a dangerous place to travel, as untold thousands were being picked up, tortured, and disposed of in a state park by the El Salvadorian militia. I sat with mothers of the disappeared, whose photo albums showed pictures of their dead loved ones displaying myriad signs of torture. And yet I witnessed courage, love, joy, and community like I never have come close to experiencing since. There was something in the fierceness of the way the people met the truth of their lives and risked for the sake of justice. In a place and time of the greatest personal horrors, they were able to contact life in its fullest. It was a profound time for me. I was shocked when I returned to the States from my time in Central America. Everything felt protected and stale to me. It was as if we as a culture have constructed barriers to tame reality. It was as if we as a culture aren't able to risk telling ourselves the truth. Not long ago, I witnessed the pathos of a situation in which a pit bull killed a small dog. A few days later, my son was in a pet store and overheard the manager tell one of the new clerks that in order to sell the pit bull puppy they had in the store, the clerk was to tell customers that the puppy was an American Terrier. This effort to construct barriers to hide truth seems to me like a contagious disease in our country. What are we so afraid of? So the truth can be uncomfortable at times for sure, but the inner strength and bravery that is developed from facing the truth head on, not trying to conceal or distract from it, is unparalleled. It's extremely valuable. One of the things that amazed me when I first read Gandhi's autobiography was his statement about his life being an experiment with truth. I would have expected him to say an experiment in nonviolence, but he didn't. He said truth. To me, this statement captures the power that living with truth has. A poor, colonized country united in nonviolence gaining its freedom, a dominant country brought to its knees by the truth. This was arguably the greatest nonviolent revolution in history, and all because of one man's experiment with truth. It makes me wonder what my life might look like if I were willing to contact truthfulness in every moment. So beautiful. So at the end of every chapter, she gives some questions for self-exploration to just dive into and embody these concepts a little bit more. So like I said, the last week's video, we read the first half of this chapter on truthfulness. And so this week we read the last half, the second half, and we just did the first two assignments last week. So here's the second two assignments for Satya Truthfulness. You can consider these ideas today. I'd love to, again, hear your reflections and experiences in the comment section. Just a few invitations to experiment with truth in your own life. So this week, pay attention and go slow enough that you do it right the first time. Make this a week where you don't have to backtrack to apologize or correct mistakes, and where you don't run from any hard tasks that present themselves. Face each moment head on with clarity and courage. And then the second assignment. This week, look at ideas and beliefs that once served you and now have become archaic. You may unknowingly be holding on to beliefs that you no longer need. Honor these beliefs because, like a vehicle, they brought you to your current place on your journey. As you let go of what no longer serves you, pay attention to where denial shows up and celebrate your movement toward a clearer, more authentic you. Watch how this exercise frees up your energy for the further emergence of your authentic realness. So beautiful. So if this content resonated with you guys today, I would love it if you could give me a like on this video, subscribe, comment your experience, again, share, tag a friend who you think this message might be relevant to. And if you have loved yoga philosophy with me and you would love to go a little bit deeper, as I said in the beginning of this video, the Yamas and Niyamas are just the first two of the 8 limbs of yoga. And over on my Patreon community, I actually do a whole 2-part long talk about, thank you, Joan, love you guys. So over on my Patreon community, I do a whole talk about the entire 8 limbs of yoga and share more about other yoga philosophy as well, and Ayurveda and healthy tips and healthy recipes, lifestyle tips. We also just have a really beautiful community over there that you'll get to be a part of if you join us. So I'll put the link for my Patreon in the description box. It's patreon.com/LivityYogini, and we would just love to have you. For $3.33 per month, you can unlock access to all this exclusive content that I produce just for you guys. And yeah, I think that's the last thing other than my coloring book. Just want to share with you guys. I've been sharing in every video, but just in case somebody is new, this is my hand-drawn original coloring book. So if you order from me directly, you can get a signed copy. And I drew every single page in here. There's 22 creatures to color for your coloring pleasure and enjoyment. and they are $15 to $25 sliding scale, plus $5 for shipping. So just contact me if you would be interested in purchasing a copy. Yeah, I think that's all I had for you guys. Also just want to wish you a happy Pisces full moon. How are you feeling from that? I'm definitely been feeling feely. Today definitely feels like a full moon day to me, just with the energy being really intense, and I've been like pretty emotionally like on an emotional roller coaster today, which full moon energy tends to bring up. It's very like, you know, it's shining that light on the present moment, shining the light on the truth, bringing truth to our awareness. And sometimes, again, that truth is not the most comfortable, and I think that these messages are always so relevant for me in my personal life. It's so interesting how the philosophy does that, and I've heard from some of you that everything that I share every week, the message just happens to be relevant to whatever's going on in your personal life. So for me, this week with sitting with the discomfort of truth was really relevant for me. Just with like this morning, I feel like I spent the whole day adulting, just dealing with like taxing stuff, paying my freelance taxes, and like medical things, just a lot of like harder things that are not necessarily comfortable or fun at all, but it's so important to actually do our due diligence and take care of ourselves, you know, and be responsible, functioning members of society and all that good stuff. So yeah, happy Pisces full moon. I hope it's been dreamy and beautiful and nourishing for you guys. And I just wanted to also show you my shirt because it says Cheers Queers, and that makes me happy because yay, LGBT community, hashtag queer for life. Alright guys, I love you so much. Again, share, tag a friend, and I will talk to you next week.